Oh, okay.
I think he had a couple friends come, because at about 1:30 he was having lunch, and he said a couple other people were there to help him.
Good. I get. All right, it's 7 o'clock, so we'll call this meeting to order. Just have everybody please rise. Face the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. We're going to start with public comments. Same rules apply. If anyone has any questions about it, I can go over them, but basically just make sure you state your name and address the board and not anyone else in the room. Going once, going twice, 3 times. All right, moving on to reports. Athletic boosters and athletic director, or boosters first.
Thanks. Chris Litke, Secretary of the Boosters. I know we're on the schedule every time, and I haven't made it yet, so first time. All right.
Welcome. Glad you can make it.
I represent Chris, you're good. I got you
Yeah,
covered.
I know. I just wanted to say this Friday, 8 a.m. is our biggest fundraiser of the year. It helps fund our scholarships, our charter buses, our senior photos, our athletic banquet, and a bunch of other things that we've bought over the years. Right now we got 109, 107 signed up. There still is time. Probably Wednesday will be the cutoff. So if anyone still wants to golf, we still have room, and we'd appreciate it. Also, by your next meeting, we would already have the volleyball tournament, September 10th, 8 teams. We also put that on. It kind of gets the girls an ability to not have to travel an hour and a half for a tournament. They get to stay home. We don't make much money on it, but it's nice to have everybody here. We do need volunteers for that, concessions, cleanup, setup, and line judging. So if anyone wants to volunteer, we'd appreciate it. Our next meeting is the 17th of the month at 6 o'clock in the conference room, and anyone and everyone is welcome.
Chris, question. If somebody wants to volunteer, how should they go about doing that?
They can go on the Facebook page, message, or they can contact me or Heather Silverman or any of our other representatives, which is on the athletics website that Hank created.
What is the date again?
The date for our meeting,
No,
for the golf outing?
No.
Volleyball.
Volleyball, September 10th.
September 10th.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you next month.
Yes, I will see you.
We'll see you Friday.
Hey. Athletic director?
Which one am I using here? Better?
Stereo.
Right. Good evening. Just a couple things to highlight. today our fall sports started for us. First day of girls golf with Badger. Tomorrow we have football, girls tennis, and girls swimming starting. He already mentioned the Booster Club golf outing. And then next Monday we have boys soccer, co-ed cross country, girls volleyball. They'll have their first days. And we are working on the first day. There's a boot camp that we're running for dance and cheerleading out at Coach Spacala's place. So that's coming up down the road here too. I don't have the exact date on my sheet here. We did have our fall preseason meeting. We introduced the online registration, talked about the website. I wish there was more people there, but we're getting that information out as best we can right now. And just one last thing, I worked with Ms. Sully Johnson on updating the student co-curricular handbooks. We noticed there was a couple things that weren't matching up on both of them, so we made sure that those were corrected. So otherwise, obviously with a 2-week turnaround, there wasn't too much going on, but we'll start diving into the fall season here soon.
Excellent. Any questions?
No, I thought that the orientation, that sign-up meeting was very informative. Good job with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the district administrator.
I got 3 things for you quickly tonight. One, the staff will be returning here in the next couple of weeks. All the administrative assistants and counselor will be returning on the 15th of September, so that's next Monday. And then on the 22nd, teachers will start trickling in. And then on the 23rd is our all-district meeting. So Jack, if you're available to come and speak that morning, certainly would love to have you.
What was that date again?
September 23rd, 8 o'clock in the morning would be the time for you. August.
Like, it seemed like a really late start.
You know, I love a late start. It's been a short summer.
So,
All right, August 23rd.
At what time? 8 a.m. would be when?
Yep, we'll start at 8 a.m. and you can speak to all the district. And then on that same day at noon, we're doing the all-district luncheon. And that's where we invite all the retirees. So if you plan to come and you're all are welcomed, please let Desiree know, because if we have more than 2 of you, we'll have to post it as a potential quorum.
I would plan to come, but I'll let her know.
Yeah, just let Des know. A couple other things that are coming up. One, we've been watching our 4K numbers. Today, Julie Gauger was in. She said right now we're at 45. So we'll be confirming those numbers. If we're at 45, we will probably have to look potentially at a 3rd section of kindergarten, 4K. So that's something we're looking at. We did not cap the 4K numbers low. We wanted them to grow. And 45 is right where we'd like to be for 3 sections. So that's something we're looking at. So we want to confirm those numbers. We may have to quickly hire a 4K teacher. We'll meet on Thursday and we'll take a firm look at that. So we may be scrambling quickly. And then the second thing is, or third thing, we have some grant money that we have gotten through a couple different sources. So does Wood School. We're looking at how we're going to spend that. So we may be proposing to create we're going to propose to create a social worker position for a year to use that grant funding. We haven't moved on that because we had put a posting up about 3 weeks ago to see if we could find somebody. And all of a sudden, miraculously, a candidate did emerge. It would be a part-time position, 60%, and it would use that grant money for both school districts. And Cassie will talk a little bit about that in her report.
Any questions for Dr. White? Thank you. All right, moving on to middle school, high school. Sol Jones.
Okay.
You got it.
Hi, Emily Soley Johnson, my 2nd time up here officially. And I'm sporting my USAT national shirt. Yesterday was the age group nationals in Milwaukee, and I competed, and it was wonderful. So yes, and I'm ready to go today. So this evening, I wanted to share, since our last meeting a couple weeks ago, Hank and I met, and we went over the handbook. Specifically, we looked at our athletic and co-curricular eligibility. We wanted to align it a little bit more with our mission. It was a weekly grade check for students, and that kind of determined their eligibility. We felt as though, based on our mission statement, that maybe we weren't preparing our students socially enough, that by having weekly checks, we were kind of our students would be ineligible for a week, and were the grade books updated, it was pressure on the teacher, it was pressure on the students. So we adjusted it slightly so that we're still doing weekly grade checks. However, we are working with students and student athletes, students in clubs, to come up with some type of an improvement plan if we notice any grades slipping. So then we would have some type of check-in with the teacher, the student, and any stakeholders, study hall teachers, homeroom teachers, to support the student to be academically successful. So then we would look if they're getting more Fs, now what do we need to do? Do we need to have a meeting? And then we would follow WIA guidelines at the semester for students with, correct me if I'm wrong, 2 or more Fs. Are there any questions about that piece, the co-curricular? Because that will be a change that we will share out with our students and parents.
I think it makes sense.
No, I noticed that was included there. Yeah, I think it makes sense. We want them to be successful. Yep.
Yeah.
So they'll be eligible until the end of the semester?
Yeah, so what would happen is, let's say a student has 1 F, all right? You have an F, I need you to go print this plan off, bring this plan to the teacher that you have a failing grade with. Talk about why are you failing? Is it study skills? Is it the content? Come up with a plan of, am I meeting with you before school, after school? Am I coming in during lunch? And then work with your coach, so your coach is aware that, hey, you might be late to practice because, yes, your grades will take precedence. And then we would just continue through the semester. And if there's 1 F at semester, technically with WIA, you're still eligible for a second semester.
Okay.
So it just opens the lines of communication and shows our students that we support them to be involved, because we know that kids who are involved are more successful in high school.
Okay.
So who are the students doing this checking in with? Is it yourself? Is it
Yeah.
Ms. Lyle or Hank? Or who?
So what would happen is Hank is doing the weekly checks of grades. As soon as we notice a student that has a failing grade, we'd get them an improvement plan, and they would be tasked with meeting with their teacher. We would have a list of who the students are. They have to bring the filled out plan to me, and then I'd make copies and share with whoever the stakeholders are that would need a copy of it, and the coach would be aware to follow up and check in with the student.
So you talked about the situation where they have 1 F. If they have multiple Fs and you don't see improvement, they're actually going down. Do we still wait till semester so how would that work?
No, so that would be more of a case by case, right? Because it's easy to put a blanket statement for all students, but if we start to see several failing grades, then that indicates we probably need to have a meeting with the parents. What is the root cause of this problem? Because there's something going on that the student is failing that many classes. And at that point, that might be a time where they have to step away from their club or their sport.
Okay. I think that's reasonable.
Okay. Another piece about the handbook, you might have noticed the final exam percentages. All of our final exams will be 10%. And after meeting with the building leadership team and having a lengthy discussion as to the need for consistency with the final exam, it was agreed upon by the team that we could support 10% for all areas. So the concern was, well, what if someone's doing a project and you're working on that project for several weeks, and that's the culminating semester exam or whatever you want to call it? You know, we need some type of formal checks throughout that is going into your grades or checking on student progress, and then the final component will be the semester grade. When you put a semester exam at 20%, a student's grade can go up or down an entire letter grade. And so we want to look at what is essential, what should our students know and understand by the end of the semester. We need, and I personally believe, that there should be some consistency. And I know that in our strategic plan, that is something that we're working on, is consistency of grades. So I think this is a good first step for us.
So previously, some teachers would do 20%, some would do 15, some would do 10. They got an option of what they chose to do. And your team has chosen to go with 10. Have you sent this piece out to all the staff yet?
So we're going to share this at in-service. I'll be sharing it. And
Okay.
then at the end of the semester, I'll be getting feedback from teachers and
To see if it
students.
worked.
But we will stick with this for the school.
I think consistency is great. And I think 10% right now is what I used to do. So No, no.
There are some subjects that don't have a final exam, so there wouldn't be like PE class where it's, you know, there's not really a final exam, is there, when you're taking physical education?
No, this is my first year,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure what the PE teachers have done in the past with final exams. Where I've been in the past, our PE teachers have had some type of final.
Okay.
It could also just be a chapter test. I know myself as an AP teacher, we, instead of taking 3 or 4 days of reviewing, we continued because we knew how important understanding the content for an AP test was. So that's fine, because if you look at the percentage of your tests throughout the semester, if you did your calculation, and then how many you had, and the way that your percentages, which we have some autonomy in that group, it might not be much different than the 10% final, depending on how many students you take.
Okay. Any other questions? Do you have anything else?
I don't think so. Did you have any other questions? We did make sure that Pamela and the coach were aligned. There were a couple of discrepancies, so we would clean that up. Did you have any other questions?
No. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Emily. Move on to elementary school. Dr. Bond?
In the board notes that I submitted, it was mostly just explaining or reviewing some of the projects that the elementary school plans to work on this year. One of the ones that I'd like to highlight is the work with executive functioning for our students. Executive functioning skills are so important as far as being able to pay attention and organize and communicate and plan and strategize and all those things. And we have found that the elementary students who are moving up towards middle school and high school are really kind of lacking those skills and then are not as prepared for elementary and high school as they get. So this is high in the guidance classes. We'll be doing more work to help students develop these skills and then also be communicating with classroom teachers so that continues in the classroom more consistently and also communicate with families so they know what we're working on and we can do some of these things at home as we Zoom or things like that. So that's one of the things that I want to highlight. Any questions about that?
No?
And then the other one is just the importance of training when you have your curriculum in place. We go back into math, which is our new math curriculum this year, and also the studies weekly. So during that first week of in-service, we do have the getting started training for each of those, and then we kind of have a follow-up on those trainings either September or October to make sure that we are supporting our teachers in the way that we can, making sure that we give them enough time to experience the curriculum before, providing them the training so that they can do what they support. And we'll continue to train with us and support.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Then we move on to student services. Ms. McCumber?
Hello. So I just want to highlight one part of my notes that Dr. White talked about previously. So we have been receiving funds through the Wisconsin-Madison Department of Justice Threat Assessment Grant. So that enabled us to hire the school psychology intern last year, as well as a social work intern, just to help so we can focus more on student mental health. So those individuals went on to other career paths, so they are not with us anymore. So along with the grant dollars we still had left from that, as well as the Get Kids Ahead grant funding, we were trying to brainstorm how we could best spend those dollars. It's really hard to find full-time employees right now, but our budget allowed for a part-time employee, and so that's why we talked to Jennifer as well about partnering with Woods to just put a position on WeCan, a social worker position. If we didn't get any applicants for that, we'd kind of scale it back and call something like a mental health navigator, where they wouldn't necessarily have to be licensed, but they could help families just access mental health resources. We were lucky enough to get one applicant for a .6 social work position, so she just finished her master's in social work, and she did come in and we got to meet her today, and I checked out references that were very positive. We're not ready to present that recommendation to the board yet, but I'm hopeful that we will have someone in place, and that position will just be for the length that we have those grant dollars. So it's not coming from just it's not coming from district dollars. It's will be paid for solely by grant funding.
We always like that.
Yes.
So at 0.6%, how much of the school year do you think that would cover?
So we're looking at it a 3-day-a-week position for the school year, 2 days a week here, 1 day a week at Woods.
For the school year.
Yes.
That's the whole school.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and we very much want that to be a student-centered position where they can do presentations in classrooms, run small groups, meet kids individually, do crisis intervention, and then work directly with the families to get them the resources that they need as well. So.
Okay, and here's the last question I would have on this. Where would this person be located, since we're working on locating everyone?
I don't think we've decided yet. I don't know if Dr. White has any ideas. There was the one office in the middle school hallway, that smaller office that Mrs. Pye had for a while up here, so I could see that as being an option, and then running her small groups out of our conference room and student services. Sorry, I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn. That was just my thought.
Decision's been made.
Discussion, I'm sure.
Yes.
After you guys.
So did you say that they'd be doing more like large group presentations and some small groups, or are they going to be doing some one-on-one as well with students?
Yeah, definitely. I think wherever we see the need, it kind of ebbs and flows in terms of like students wanting support, or they're overwhelmed with finals, so they're not interested in doing small group activities. So it's really whatever we see as being the need. And like whatever kind of issues are maybe going on, like the middle school might have like a social media issue, then we're hoping that person can assist us either in presenting or getting a free community resource to come in and present on the appropriate use of social media or whatever, topic arises. So I think she will be or whoever will be very flexible in being able to deliver those services however we need.
Any other questions?
All right, I hope to have more information next month. Thank
Looking
you.
forward to it.
We'll have a job description, 6603 with Woods, and then the personnel transaction recommendation for that position. So all those three of those pieces would be at the September board meeting.
Excellent. All right, with that, any reports from school board members? All right, if we have none, we can move on to action items, the consent agenda. I entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on to personnel transactions, we have a couple.
Yes, we have one resignation. That is Mr. Dunlap, our gentleman running back and forth. He has accepted a position in another district to teach art. And then we are recommending for hires, first, Jennifer Pelnar for the middle school, high school art position. She is currently an art teacher in another district, and so we are recruiting. So she would be coming here. Then Mr. Johnson and I are recommending Emily Allen for the position of varsity softball coach, and we're recommending Matt Landers for the position as assistant football coach.
I'll move to approve the personnel transactions listed on the August 8, 2022 personnel transaction sheet.
I would second.
All right, any discussion?
Is Emily currently on staff here?
Emily Allen, she has worked as the assistant softball coach to Jeff probably for at least I think all 10 years I've been here. She's an alumni. She was on the state softball team, I believe, and has been involved with the program.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on to the resolution authorizing temporary borrowing.
So we, at the same time, almost every year, we do short-term borrowing just because of the gap between when we get our funding from the state and when some of our bills are due. So we have done short-term borrowing. We work with PMA. They do a consortium, so it gives us better rates and things like that. This year, Jennifer Fredericks recommending we borrow $1.8 million for the short-term borrow. Jennifer, you want to add anything? Not to exceed.
Last year was 1.5, to be safe, the consortium isn't ready at this time, so to be able to get on this agenda tonight, we did not to exceed.
Okay.
We've always done it as a not to succeed, so.
When does the state funding usually come? Like October, November?
So it really comes down to property tax revenue, right? So our biggest shortfall is the end of December, early January. We have the end of the semester payouts, the holiday pays, but obviously we don't get our first settlement until middle of January, and then our second installment the middle of February. So we're fully funded, or not fully funded, but much better along by February. But it's really, last year you had authorized 1.5 million, and I took down 1 million to be safe, and that was still a cushion. So we really don't need that much, but it is still critical to have some of that cushion there. So like I said, for today, we are requesting 1.8, but it'll definitely be less than that. So I believe it's the end of September. If I remember correctly, it was right after I started last year that all the documents, they went out to the bond market as a levy anticipation note.
We've always had a very high rating in the past. It's still true.
Yes, it is. We're actually rated as a consortium, as a group,
Right.
so we don't have our own rating, but yes, we are highly rated.
So
To approve the resolution authorizing temporary borrowing in an amount not to exceed 1.8 million, issuance of tax and revenue anticipation promissory notes, and participation in the PMA levy and aid anticipation notes program. The parameters of resolution allow the district administrator, business manager, or board president execute full transaction.
Second.
this will have to be a roll call vote.
Okay. Is that what you wanted to say before, or did you want to add something
No,
else?
that's what I was going to tell you. We'll do a
Okay.
roll call.
Is there any discussion on this before we vote? No, we already had a little discussion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote. So alphabetically, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
I always get that wrong. All right, so that passes unanimously. So we can move on to approve the revision to the employee handbook.
So a couple of our employees came in concerned about the proration of the health insurance benefits. So basically what we've got right now is if you are 90 to 100%, you pay the 10% of your health insurance. Anybody from 75 to, I believe it's 89%, pay 15% of the premium. And when you actually do the 15%, that ends up being pretty significant for those part-time employees. They're already making less because they're part-time, and then we sort of sock it to them and make them pay more for insurance. After really looking at the amounts and how that's impacting employees, Jennifer and I recommend that we remove the proration portion and just make it that those who qualify for insurance just pay the straight 10%.
Do you know how much that'll affect the district as far as the budget? Are we talking thousands, tens of thousands?
$800 per teacher, and we have 3.
So, okay, so it's minimal to us, but it's a big impact on them.
Yeah, they're being their 80% employees, so they're 20% less than everyone, but they're paying 50% more. So.
Right. Proportionally, it's wonky, yeah.
Yeah. We put that in about a year ago, and we've ran some issues. We made a edit last year, And then as we get further into it, we just find that that's just really not working for how we're trying to treat employees.
All right. I'll take a motion unless someone wants to make a comment.
I'll move to approve the removal of the proration of district contributions for health insurance from the Certified Educator Employee Handbook and the Support Staff Handbook effective August 8, 2022.
That was quite the dramatic pause.
You're welcome, yeah. Just
Do we have
making sure,
any-
giving somebody else a chance, Jack.
You know, anybody but me can make a motion. So is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on to the elementary student handbook, the middle school handbook, co-curricular handbook, Chromebook initiative handbook, and the emergency plan.
Okay, so first up would be the elementary student handbook. I know Dr. Bond shared a copy of that with you. Any questions that you'd like her to respond to?
I've got one, and not to put anybody on the spot, I've got a son in the elementary school, I fully support this, completely support it. Is, or will the cell phone policy be new to students this year?
At the elementary level?
Will it be new? This is the first time, looks like they're gonna, if they create a phone in school, they will be able to have that for them. I support that, I didn't know if that was new.
We put it into practice last year with students that were having trouble keeping it in their own locker. That was the way it was done in the past. This year, we had 2 students who were abusing having their phones. They did not keep them in their lockers. They were texting and calling whoever they wanted to, and were caught on several occasions. So I spoke with those parents last year and said if your child really has to have a phone here, then they're going to need to leave it in the office when they arrive to school, and they can pick it up when they leave the school. And the parents were not so crazy about that, but agreed to it. And the longer we moved into the school year, we all just thought, we talked as a building leadership team and as a staff, that just made the most sense. There are phones in every single classroom and in the office, so if a child ever needed to make a phone call or talk to somebody, they can certainly do that in any of those locations. So really the phones are, I think from the parents' perspective, are so that if there's a problem with picking them up after school, again, we're there in the office for them to be picked up, but the parent just feels more comfortable that they have their phone. So yes, it's new in the handbook that will be consistent with all students.
So as the students arrive at school in the morning, they need to stop by and give one of the staff in your office their cell phone for the day.
That's correct. They've done it willingly,
Oh, that's fine.
so there's no need for them to have a phone. And actually,
I don't believe there's any need for the upper level grades to have their phone.
and my concern more is really that someone's going to possibly steal it. I mean, there's just no reason to have that in any other location. Other questions about that?
Any other question about the handbook?
Are they allowed to check it at like lunch, for example, if they really are desperate? Not that I would want them to or would care.
Sure,
but-
they can check,
Okay.
they can come into the office and check it, sure.
Okay, but it stays in the office.
Stays in the office.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion for this handbook, because we're going to do each handbook separately.
I move to approve the 2022-2023 elementary student handbook as presented.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on to middle school, high school.
So Mrs. Sully Johnson went over those changes when she did her presentation, so I don't think there's anything else more than what she presented earlier.
Are there any questions?
Well, I was just curious how it's different at the upper level. They're allowed to have cell phones in the building. Are they expected to keep them in a backpack or a locker? Or do they, in some classrooms, use them?
So at the middle school level, they're supposed to keep them in their lockers. At the high school level, they will sometimes use them in class, and the middle school level as well. It just depends on the activities the teacher's doing. With the middle school, they aren't supposed to use their phone at all during the school day because they had a lot of issues at lunch, places like that. So I know last year they eliminated the middle school using them throughout the day, particularly at lunchtime. High school, you can use them in between classes at lunchtime, those things.
Any other questions regarding the handbook? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the 2022-2023 middle/high school student handbook as presented.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Going on to co-curricular.
Again, Mrs. Sully Johnson went over the changes they proposed to the co-curricular. Most of that centered around eligibility for grades.
Any question about using cell phones during sports?
I would move to approve the 2022-2023 co-curricular handbook as presented.
A second.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on to the Chromebook initiative.
There were minor changes to the Chromebook handbook, and most of that was aligning the cell phone policies to the, to the handbooks.
I'd move to approve the 2022-2023 Chromebook one-to-one initiative handbook as presented.
Any discussion? This isn't directly about the handbook, but is that program, do you feel, I know that Mrs. Sully Johnson wasn't here last year, but for the elementary and other people, has it been successful as far as the students utilizing the program, or is it something where it's just a device that we're using because everybody else is using it? Like, are we getting the most out of it is basically what I'm asking.
I would say during COVID, we got a lot out of it, but the teachers have really moved to doing a lot of their stuff on the Google platform. So the kids are able to access classroom materials, they're able to submit assignments. So the Chromebooks are a lot more than just a paperweight. I mean, they're doing a lot of things with their Chromebooks. And so again, we see most classes are using them pretty consistently. Elementary does not take them home, but at the middle school, high school level, the kids bring them back and forth and certainly have them with them everywhere they go.
I have heard a little pushback from parents about we need to get them back to actually reading books as opposed to reading everything off a screen, things like that. Are we going too far sometimes with the Chromebook, or do we have a good balance right now with using text versus screen or other,
I would believe in my mind, as a superintendent, that we have a pretty good balance. Again, particularly at the elementary level, they're really not using the Chromebooks, consistently. When I do observations around the elementary school, they are doing a lot of interaction face-to-face, reading books, doing that kind of stuff. Middle high school, certainly they use them more. Certainly we're seeing a lot of textbooks and books and things becoming online, so we're not always having the hardcover books. But again, I still think our kids are still reading a lot of literature, doing a lot of work from outside the Chromebooks. I think the big push last year, I think there was a big push on the online platform. I can't remember what the name of it was, whatever the one we were doing, and I think there was some pushback on that.
Yeah, the math.
It was MobiMax. MobiMax. I think that was somewhere that push was coming back from.
I had a question.
Well, just I want to allow anybody else. We have principals and teachers out there. Just if you want to say anything, you don't have to. I just wanted to give you a chance to speak on that if you wanted to. Okay.
My question was for the elementary principal. So Dr. Bond, is there a certain age, or do all the elementary kids leave their Chromebooks in school? Or do some of the grades take them home?
So per the one-to-one handbook, the Chromebooks are assigned to students as young as 4K, and then they're rotated through the system, I believe, every 3 years. At the 4K level, they're just really getting acclimated to the mouse and things like that, because some of their assessments are using the computer, but mostly everything they do is hands-on. As the students get older, when they go to technology library, they bring their Chromebooks with them because Mrs. Mitchell teaches them amazing things to use technology, and they use their own personal Chromebook for that. They also bring them to music class, and I think they've even started bringing them to PE just for some various activities that they're doing with those. But nobody at the elementary takes the Chromebook home. except for if they are ill for more than 2 days. Like Dr. White said, we do use the Google platform for 3 through 5 and then the Seesaw for K through 2, so that if they're gone for an extended period of time, they can access all of the information from the classroom on that device.
Thank you. I just was talking with my third grade to-be grandson today, and he said he would be bringing his Chromebook home every night and plugging it in and charging it and bringing it back. And that's Elkhorn. That's not Williams Bay. But I was just curious what we were doing. Do the middle school kids, are they responsible for taking them home and bringing them back?
Yes. Yes, yes, they
Okay,
are.
so starting with sixth grade. Thank you.
Any other question or discussion on the one-to-one Chromebook handbook? So we already had a motion and a second, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and then moving on to the district emergency plan.
Yeah, the only change we've made to the emergency plan was really updating names from people that have left the district and new people in and those things. So there really isn't any significant changes except for names.
Actually, a couple of quick questions on the SRO is not officially referenced in this. Is that intentional?
Correct.
Okay. And is there a specific role that that person plays or not because of that you want that separation of what their task is versus what the district's response would be to a situation?
Right, because the handbook really is covering how our staff will respond.
Okay.
If there was a true emergency situation, the SRO is out of the picture. He's working with law enforcement and the fire department, and he's on that side of the fence. We're dealing with the kids and the staff.
Thank you. And I know, I'm sorry, previously, I don't remember what meeting it was, there was conversation about some new door locks and different little safety measures, and that may not be referenced in this document, but it made me think of those items.
Yeah, we're still working on some of those and working through some things. I know Ryan's doing some further research on that.
Okay.
We like the door mechanisms, but again, there's still some concerns.
Okay.
I'd like to assume this, but it's always good to ask. I know that the SRO has read through that, I'm sure. Have you sat down and discussed and made sure that there's anything in there that he might say, you know what, you really should take a look at this, and this is how we're going to be handling the situation, so maybe this is, you should change how you do it or tweak something. Have you had that discussion?
Not with Ben.
Okay.
But again, we've gone over this with Justin Tim,
Okay.
police chief.
Okay.
We are looking at probably, most likely in February, doing another sort of roundtable top activity with the county and the police, because with the number of new staff and just the fact it's been about 5 years since we've done that, I'm bringing them in. But again, like recently, they just did a drill with their little plastic guns, but they were in the building doing some things and practicing. So we have a pretty consistent interaction with the police chief and Rich Gluth and those people.
I had a question regarding, and maybe it doesn't fall under this, but I just noticed on the way in, and I guess I've not been very observant, there are letters and numbers by the doors. So when I walked in the door, there's a 6F, or whatever it was. I just made that up. Is that consistent with something to do with the emergency plan, or is that specifically for police and fire to tell them what door to come to or something?
That is for police and fire, specifically SWAT. Basically how they set it up is they look at each side of the building and go from left to right and number it that way. So they go around with A6, I think is the entrance to the high school, and that's the 6th door from the left to right on the south side of the building. And so each door is marked, and that's specifically for SWAT and for police.
Okay, thank you.
And they were part of helping create those numbering systems.
Any other discussion or questions? If not, we need a motion.
I move to approve the Williams Bay School District Emergency Plan as presented.
Second.
All right. Hearing no further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on to the bid for the office remodeling.
Yeah, this came pretty somewhat quick. So we have the dean of students position. We were looking at possibly putting that person, Brooke Lyle, in an office over toward the middle school side. After we hired Mrs. Sully Johnson, we had a lot of conversation, ultimately to feel like, that position needs to be in the main office so that she can be there to help with discipline, and that her and Mrs. Sully Johnson can interact and work together. If we put her in that office next to Mrs. Sully Johnson, then we have to find a place for the SRO, and we want the school resource officer to be in the main office, just because of that visibility, and again, just the right place for him to be. So we looked at him moving into the nurse's office, because the nurse pretty much stays on the elementary school most of the time. That office is primarily used to house some equipment, and then also when kids get sick, they go and lay on the cot and wait for their ride to come. So then we looked at possibly converting the two sort of storerooms on the left side when you're coming into the office from the outside into sort of a sick bay area for the kids. We would take the wall out in between the two offices. We'd be able to put a cot in there, probably a chair and a trash can, and then they could sit there and wait for their ride to come. So we got bids from Shearer Construction to remove that wall. At the same time, in the health room is a door that goes from the health room into the women's bathroom, which really doesn't need to be there. If we have to move the SRO in there, he has to have his gun case in there, because he does have a rifle that he keeps at school in a locked gun case. And it has to be in the office with him, so we'd have to move it in there, and so certainly that door could not be there. So in process of trying to work through all that, we also looked at possibly cutting the superintendent's office in half, because it's fairly big. There's a little conference area that never really gets used. So ultimately, we got a bid on splitting that office in half. The cost of putting that second office in or taking the wall out of the detention rooms ends up being about the same amount of money. So our recommendation was to go ahead and create the second office. It just gives us more flexibility in that main office area. So that would allow the nurse's office to stay as is, except for the door being gone, allow the SR to stay where he's at, and then put the Dean of Students in. If the Dean of Students position is only 1 year, long term, we are looking at potentially moving the district offices down to where the student services currently are, and moving the counselor and the registrar up to the main office. And again, that'll create that continuity and more accessibility between the principal and the counselor and the kids. So that's sort of what we're looking at. Ryan and I have been looking at this quite a bit. So I know there are questions.
Do you need a motion tonight, or is this something we'll do in September?
Well, this is an action item. So
It's an action item, so we could do a motion tonight. I didn't give you a sample motion
That's
because
okay.
it's been moving pretty quick.
Real quick question. So the office/storeroom, which is the third one on the list, that is basically reworking the district administrator's office into 2 offices?
Correct. Hold on, let me just get the bid.
Just want to make sure that, because, we're talking about that being an office or a conference room, but it's a storeroom.
Yeah, that would be office storeroom.
Office storeroom would be the plan where we take the district administrator office and cut it in half and make it 2
Correct.
offices. And then
So it wouldn't be a storeroom, really. It would be more either conference room / office.
And then the nurse's office, restroom door, it looks like there's more in there than just taking the door out if we do the full nurse's office, or office into an office for the SRO or for Ms. Lyle. So if we only take the door out, is that going to be a lower sum? Or does that $3,250 cover just taking the door out and patching the wall?
It should just cover taking the door out.
Okay.
Does the door need to come out, or can the door handle and lock be blanked with a plate?
Well, but then we have to buy a new door to put across the hall for the second office.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay. Either way, I suppose it costs you money.
I'm not for sure why that door was ever there. It makes no sense to me.
I didn't do it.
Didn't want to have to walk all the way out in the hall and around. Those extra 2 steps were...
Hey, it's never been used. That's all I know.
Okay.
Because it's always locked from the bathroom side, so you couldn't get into it if you wanted to.
Right. Thank you for clarifying the quote.
So is the motion then, I believe, would be for
To accept the bids for removing the nurse's office door
and splitting the office, the district administrator's office into 2
Yes.
offices.
Yeah,
But we won't do anything with the rest of the room.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. So I would motion then to accept the bid from Sherrar Construction for work to remodel the district administrator's office into 2 individual offices, to remove the nurse's office restroom door to salvage and reinstall as the office door for the second now created office in the district. That's a lot. Sorry.
Perfect.
You get my tenor. There you go. Thanks.
Do we want to put the dollar amounts on there so we know that it's 3250 plus the 11,900?
Should we, or is that?
I mean, it's as presented.
They're
so
pretty
that's
specific.
what it is, yeah.
Okay.
Well, just for clarification, someone
Yeah.
looks at this and goes, what exactly did you say?
I would agree. So the office door, the restroom, the nurse's office restroom for $3,250, or amend that to indicate that that cost would be $3,250, and the division of the district administrator's office into 2 offices at $11,900. And all of the appropriate cleaning up.
We had a motion and a second, and then we just amended it with a second. So now we just have to have a vote or discussion and then a vote on the amendment to put the dollar amounts in there. So do we have a discussion on that as far as?
On the amendment.
The amendment to add the wording that's on here along with the dollar amounts? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the amendment? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, so now we're back to the original motion with the dollar amounts and the wording on there. So basically, we're just taking the district administrator's office, splitting it in 2, taking the door, the extra door out of the nurse's room and putting it so that you can get into that second room. So that's basically the motion right now.
And they can get this done in the next
Well, Ryan, do you know a time
several
frame on this?
weeks.
So it's not a 3-week project or anything like that? It's, okay. I'm sure with drywalling, there's some dry time that you have to wait and you can't just go down to the next step. But. All right, any further discussion as far as the plan to remodel the office space?
Just a comment. I know a lot of things go into this. I put it to the staff how best to do it, but I mentioned earlier. I do think that the visibility of the SLO office where it is, where it's located is important. So you have to just take that into consideration.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and then we can move on to the discussion item, which is just our Saturday work session on the 27th, I believe?
Yes, we're on August 27th. Did I put September? Please say I didn't. Yeah, it's August 27th.
Yeah.
Again, just looking at items, right now we would be looking at the strategic plan, just reviewing it, discussing things that we have added, taken out, and just firming that up for the upcoming school year. We want to look at what our successes were from the 21-22 school year and the challenges facing the district as we move ahead. Sort of broad topic. Certainly, we'll be talking about budget. We'll be talking about staffing, as they all relate really to the strategic plan. And then finally, discussing the feedback from the exit interviews that you guys have conducted. Because I know we've talked about that just very, very briefly, but again, that would be a full conversation.
I did have a discussion with one other board member about changing up the agenda as far as priorities and what goes first. And we'd like to discuss the feedback first so that we have kind of an idea of where we want to go before we start discussing the other 2 topics, if that's fine with everybody.
Yeah, that's fine. And they all really tie together, so it's going to be
Yeah.
pretty fluid. It's just
Yeah.
trying to capture everything we might talk about.
We just want to make sure that we don't set everything up and then go back and find out what people want. Yeah. So any discussion as far as that? All right. Should have a good meeting there and try to figure out, the direction that we want to head. With that, we're back to public comments. We still have the full 30 minutes left. So if anybody wants to make a public comment, please step up to the mic. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. All right. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, thank you, everybody. Have a safe night out there.